These slides are also on Canvas. If you would like to download them, you are welcome to do that, and then you can follow along. Anybody recognize the font?
It looks like
Star Wars is a good guess.
No, it's Back to the Future.
That's also a good guess, but no. Marvel Avengers, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
the arrow in the A.
Oh, I see it.
Rebecca.
So let me get it now.
Hey,
Cool.
Gavin, just because I like
Hey, let's be kind one to another.
Rebecca, be kind to me, please.
It's the reason why I used it,
No,
because
But you told him to show
it's an empire. What? Maybe. Let's talk Pax Romana today. So, this is a continuation in chapter 6. There are some things that your book does not address that I feel are important that we are going to go into. We're going to talk about here. So, the Pax Romana is literally translated Roman peace. And it comes through the leadership and rule of Octavian. So we met him at the end of part 1. And now here he is leading us into part 2. I probably can. I was trying to make it a little bigger so you could see it easier. So here we go. Pax Romana, it comes in, this is the Roman peace. It's brought on by Octavian's rule. How did Octavian become the emperor? How did he gain his power? Through what means? Was he elected? No. How did he become the ruler? Okay, somebody died. Yes, it was a military takeover. He came by force. And so through all that confusion and chaos and war that erupted, we had at least 2 civil wars in Rome. And now here comes Octavian. He comes to power. He is going to maintain that power by force and threatening the people and using his military to keep people in line. If you think about it, why do you obey the laws that we have here in the United States? So there are multiple reasons why you might obey those rules. We'll talk about this in government when you get to be a senior. But there are actually 4 theories of why people obey their government and how governments came to be. I'm not going to give you all those today, but one of those is by force. So our government chooses not to use force unless absolutely necessary. And we're not going to get into a whole police debate here. This is not the time or place. However, our government runs on a social contract theory, which means that we have agreed to subject ourselves to the government out of our own free will in the agreement that the government will make actions that will benefit us as individuals. And when we disagree with that, that's where we have the freedoms that we see in the Bill of Rights, and we'll get to those again in government. So Octavian here, he comes to power. He rules by force, but most people respect the leadership that's there. They respect the government. They respect the authority. And so there's very little uprising, very little rebellion, and that's why it's called the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace. This is the perfect time for God to send his Son into the world. If you think about what's happened up to this point, we've had the Greek Empire take over most of the known world and establish a language that almost everybody that is educated, that's part of the major cities and the trade routes in the world here, they speak Greek. It's kind of like what we think of as English today. If you want to advance in our world, most people want to know English. In the time of the Pax Romana, if you want to advance in the world, you knew Greek because of Alexander's empire and what the Greeks brought. So that set up the language for people to be able to communicate with each other. And then we have the Romans take over. And when the Romans come in, they now set up a government that is stable, that is respected by the people, that brings peace. And so it's at this point here that God chooses to send his Son into the world, the birth of Christ. We'll get to that, yes. They do crucify people. So let's talk about Augustus or Octavian here. And he is known by a couple of different names. Just because historians like to confuse you and make tests more difficult. Sense of sarcasm.
Oh, I was looking for that name.
Were you really?
I seriously was.
Yeah.
On the emperor question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's known by both Augustus and Octavian. Yeah. So not exactly, but we're
No.
yeah.
No.
It's gonna get better.
Octavian is a person from Augustus, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's confusing.
I know. So Octavian is Augustus. Augustus is Octavian. Now, when he takes over as emperor, the people give him a title. They don't call him emperor at that time. So they call him princeps or princeps, depending.
So you can't say it like that.
Depending upon your interpretation of the translation. Princeps or princeps, I've heard it both ways, was his nickname or his title given to him by the people. And it means first citizen. And I'm already catching a theme here that's going on, and why some of you may be missing some critical pieces of information, because I'll be talking and you're talking, and so then you're missing it and the person that you're talking to is missing it. So some of these things I don't necessarily go back and repeat because we have too much to get to. So I would highly recommend that you are listening the first time. Joel, do you have a question? It's really difficult, huh? Okay. I will keep that in mind. So let me handle this and talk with Joel. I will try not to use this one again. I do have this. So when you download on Canvas, you can change the font. I know you don't have your computer here, so that doesn't help you today. But when you go home tonight, you get your computer, download it, change the font so that way you can read a little bit better. And I will keep that in mind in the future. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's because I wrote it in Keynote, which is a Mac product, and I put it on there for PowerPoint for you guys because I know you guys all have PowerPoint. So it must have changed that in that process. Let's go back to princeps. Okay, so his nickname means first citizen, and he reached out to the common people, and the people loved him. He was everything that they wanted Julius Caesar to be. And I think he learned a lot from the whole situation with Julius Caesar, and he used that as he was governing the people. No. Now he adds on a couple titles to his name. He adds on the title Augustus, and that comes from his power in the Senate. Okay, we'll get to how many names he has in a minute. So he adds the title Augustus from his power in the Senate and from his time in the Senate. Caesar was actually his family name. So it would be like my family name is Jones, and you have your own last name. Caesar was a family name, and so he puts together all of those names, and nobody calls him this, but you could call him Octavian Augustus Princeps Caesar.
That's it?
So you could. Sorry?
This is how I study.
Octavian, I believe, was his birth name. I believe that's what he was known for before he came to power.
Okay, so it says like he had the title of Augustus. Like, what does that like significance mean or whatever?
I know it comes from the Senate, but beyond that, I don't remember. I'd have to do a little digging to find out. And if you want to find that out and report back to us, let me know. But I don't remember. I don't want to just guess out there and throw out something wrong. So the key idea here for Octavian or Augustus or Princeps is that he brought stability to Rome, which is part of what helped lead the way for the birth and time of Christ. And one of the ways that he brought that stability was by stopping corruption that was going on in the government, especially when it came to taxes. We talked about this last week or earlier this week when Victoria was trying to cheat you all out of taxes. And he looked at that and he said, there's a problem. It's making the people upset. Maybe I need to clean that up and I need to do something with that. And so when he tried to clean up the tax issue, he said, all right, I need to know how many people I have in the Roman Empire. So I am going to authorize a counting of all the people in the Roman Empire. That way I know how many people there are and how much money I should be bringing in. So that way when I go to Victoria and I say, Victoria, I want $5 per person, and I know I've got X amount of people, we do the algebra and we come out with how much money we should have. And if I don't have the right money, I know Victoria's cheating me. I know that she's not trustworthy. So let me ask you this, based on your knowledge of Christianity and the Christmas story, how does this tie in? Well, Jesus doesn't. Who gets called to Bethlehem? Joseph. Okay. Luke chapter 2 and verse 1. Luke chapter 2 and verse 1. Somebody that has your computer there, go to Luke 2:1. Find that on Bible Gateway or something. And I want you to read that for me. First one there is going to get some extra brownie points. Victoria, you have it? Okay. Oh, it's loading. Oh, you don't.
I got you.
It's here.
I
Okay.
got you.
Read
Well,
it. Read it.
okay, Victoria, read that.
Okay. In those days, Caesar Augustus.
There he is!
issued-
He's in the Bible! Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I said they weren't the same person.
You're a little
This
too
is
high.
Bible.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world.
There it is. Okay, I'm not lying to you. Not that I would, but so we need to tie together these events and understand that in God's providence and His perfect plan, that He caused Caesar for totally unrelated issues to fulfill prophecy. Caesar had no concern about the Jewish people. He didn't know who God was. I doubt he had even heard any of the prophecy that comes from Isaiah or the book of Micah, where Micah talks about how there is going to be a ruler come out of Bethlehem. And inadvertently, obviously God had a hand in all of this, he decides to add this taxation, or add this census, that was going to send Joseph back to his hometown of Bethlehem. It was an incredibly inconvenient time for Joseph and Mary. How so? She was very pregnant. And not only was she pregnant, they were also enduring a whole bunch of questions over her pregnancy, because of the fact that they were not officially married yet. And so they had to try to explain this. And of course, at least I hope you know the story here, where Joseph stepped up and said he had every right that he could have had her stoned out in the street. But he stepped up and said, no, this is going to be my wife. I'm going to treat her right. This is of God. And they stood up and said, we've done nothing wrong, but all of this plays together. I already mentioned Luke 2:1, so we're going to move on from that, to help us see God's perfect timing in all of this. So after the time of Octavian is done, there's no plan for a new ruler to take over after him. And we, again, have a repetition of history where people have not learned from the past. When Julius Caesar was assassinated, they had no plan for who was to take over and run the government. So it ended up going into civil war. When Octavian dies, there's no plan for a successor. So the United States, he may have, but their government didn't necessarily have a law that allowed them to pass it down to their children. I don't know for certain on his relatives and who he had, but because of the way that Octavian came to power through a military occupation, that was the next logical thing is, well, whoever has the strongest military is going to be the next leader. And there really wasn't anybody to step up in that position. So because of that, there is a constant battle for leadership in Rome. Everybody is vying for the top spot. They all think that they are the next Caesar. They all think that they are the next ruler. So a number of emperors decide that they are going to gain favor with the people by giving away free stuff. And in those days, the free stuff was typically related to food in order to help people continue to live. Yeah, it still works well today. We all are drawn to free food.
And t-shirts.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So a couple years ago, they opened a brand new Sam's Club near my house down in Atlanta, Georgia. And when they opened that, I went in there. First day they were open, and I have never seen such a beautiful sight in a Sam's of free samples, free food.
Sam's Club, yeah.
Now, if you walk in there today, they might have a couple of sample carts.
No, dude, on Sundays, it's crazy.
Sundays a day ago?
Yeah, they have like
Nice.
stands like every food.
So I walked in there, and they were giving away stuff that I have never seen in a store. They were giving away handfuls of shrimp. They were giving away.
Where is the Sam's Club at again?
This was down in Georgia, so we got a long way to go.
Georgia, let's go.
I mean, it was crazy. We were all drawn to free food. So these emperors knew that, and they were drawn to they were trying to get people to like them by giving them free stuff, giving them free food.
Why haven't the presidents tried that yet?
Good.
Because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Go research Venezuela. Venezuela did this just a couple years ago under Hugo Chavez. They gave away free TVs and free apartments.
Oh, free apartment.
Uh-huh.
It's just a bribe, though.
And so it worked. While he was alive, it worked. And people voted for him. He was extremely popular because he gave them stuff.
Was he a
Then the economy started to fall off, and people started losing their jobs, and they came back to the government and they said, hey, I can't afford my apartment anymore. Can you help me out? And they said, yeah, we're kind of running tight on money too. We can't help you out either. Hugo Chavez dies, leaves it to his successor to try to handle, and right now their economy has completely tanked, and all those people that had free apartments and free TVs, the TVs are no longer up to date, and the apartments, many of them have been run down because the people can't afford to keep them up. So there are extremely long lines of people without work, looking for jobs, people in poverty, and life is rough. So it doesn't work. But they try that, and they bribe them, and during the years of 235 to 285 AD, Rome has 26 different emperors. So do the math. That's 50 years, 26 emperors. On average, less than 2 years per emperor. Of those 26 emperors, 25 die a violent death. Like they're assassinated. And it's not just they get stabbed once. It's like, 26 times. Yes?
So was Emperor on the quiz like the one that said they take over for a small amount of time? If it's the word.
No, that's dictator. Yeah.
Yeah, the 6 months.
Yeah.
So why were they assassinated? Is this like
Because everybody was out to seize power.
Yeah.
So if
They
one
just killed
person
each other?
took over, then and I see that he is the emperor, I'm going to come up with a conspiracy to overthrow him and kill him. And then as soon as I get power, then somebody else is out to get me. And that it's just a rotating door of new emperors, assassination, new emperor, assassination. I mean, 26 emperors in 50 years is pretty crazy.
Like, why do they keep doing it if everyone was just killing each other? What's the point?
Well, who do you want to run the government?
Not an emperor.
Donald
I
Trump.
don't want to die, so I'm not
No.
gonna run no government.
No, so clearly you wouldn't volunteer to do that job,
No.
but somebody needs to. Because what's going to happen if nobody comes up to fill that job? What's going to happen to the country?
Why
It
can't they
will
just work
become-
together?
Make
like a
another
team?
republic or
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
It's called.
Well, it'll become a mob. What do we call that in government?
Anarchy.
Anarchy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So no government or absence of government is anarchy, and that's not a good option either. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment.